World War II wasn't just one with bullets and bombs, it was also one with paper. So today, we're going to follow an incredible paper trail that shows exactly how millions of Americans on the home front mobilized to change the course of history.
You know, when we think of war, our minds usually jump to soldiers and epic battles. But the victory in World War II, that was also forged by millions of ordinary Americans, right in their own homes, their communities, and their factories. It was a total, all-in national effort. And the real story isn't just in the big history books. It's in the everyday documents they left behind.
But just stop and think about that for a second. How do you actually mobilize an entire nation? How do you get millions of completely different people to work and save and sacrifice, all for one single goal? Well, the answer is kind of hiding in plain sight, in what looks like boring, everyday pieces of paper. This whole effort was really organized from two directions at the same time. On one hand, you had voluntary commitments bubbling up from the grassroots, like this civil defense registration card where people signed up to help. And on the other, you had mandatory orders coming down from the top, like these official air raid instructions. It was that combination, personal choice meeting government directive, that made the whole homefront engine run.
It really all kicked off with a personal call to action. Before the government could organize the country, it first had to figure out what skills people even had. So the very first step was a direct appeal for citizens to serve, not in the military, but right there in their own neighborhoods.
And just look at the level of detail here. This wasn't some casual sign-up sheet. It was basically a national skills inventory. The local defense councils needed to know everything. Are you an auto mechanic, a nurse, a radio operator? I mean, they were even cataloging entertainers. It just shows you the incredible, meticulous planning that went into using every single person's talent for the war effort. And this wasn't just some local concern. As this 1944 editorial makes crystal clear, the whole country was facing a critical worker shortage. Manpower itself was now a strategic resource, just as vital as steel or oil. Every single person who could pitch in was now seen as an essential part of the war machine.
But, mobilization wasn't just about what you could do, it was also about what you could do without. And that brings us to one of the most personal and widespread parts of the homefront experience: rationing. This was a shared sacrifice that touched literally every family in America.
So what exactly was rationing? Well, think about it. With factories all in on war production and enemy subs threatening supply ships, everyday goods got scarce, fast. Rationing was the government's system to manage that. By controlling who got what, things like gasoline, sugar, even shoes, it was trying to stop hoarding and make sure everyone, from soldiers on the front lines to families back home, got a fair shake.
And the physical symbol of all this, the thing that made it real for everyone, was the ration book. Every single household in America had one of these. It basically became a second type of currency, a passport to buy the essentials. For certain items, your money was no good without the right stamps, a constant physical reminder that the nation was at war.
Take fuel oil, for example. This card shows just how precisely they managed resources. You can see the individual coupons and these detailed logs tracking every single delivery. Every gallon was accounted for, making sure that this critical resource was available for everything from heating homes to fueling tanks and planes overseas. The system itself sounds complex, but it was actually a pretty simple and elegant loop designed for fairness. First, the government issued the books. Then, you'd use the stamps plus your cash to buy goods. The store owner collected your stamps, and then they turned those stamps back into the government to prove they needed to restock their shelves. It created this huge nationwide accounting system where, ideally, nothing went to waste. Now, all of the sacrifice at home, all this belt-tightening, it was all in service of something even bigger, the unbelievable explosion of production happening on the factory floor. This is how America became what President Roosevelt famously called the Great Arsenal of Democracy.
This industrial mobilization was like a national symphony of production. It wasn't just happening in one or two cities. Down in Florida, you had miners digging up phosphates for munitions. Along the coasts, shipyards were churning out vessels at a mind-boggling rate. And right in the heartland, auto factories completely switched gears, retooling their lines to build tanks and planes instead of cars.
To really get the scale of this, you have to see the whole country differently. Students at the time were even given maps just like this one to track where all the war materials came from. It was an exercise to help them see a new reality. America's geography had been totally remapped into one giant, interconnected factory floor, with every single state playing a vital role. Of course, building tanks and rationing sugar is one thing.
But winning the war also meant fighting a different kind of battle. A battle for public opinion, for morale, and for a really deep sense of national unity.
So how do you do that? Seriously, how do you convince millions of people to buy war bonds, to save scrap metal, to work grueling hours in a factory, and to believe that their own personal effort truly mattered? Well, you do it with one of the most powerful tools there is: persuasion.
Let's just quickly deconstruct the visual language of these wartime posters, because it was so smart. The imagery was never an accident. A strong woman standing next to heavy machinery wasn't just a nice picture. It was a set of carefully crafted messages. It said loud and clear, women are absolutely essential to victory. It said our industrial power is patriotic. And maybe most important of all, it looked you in the eye and said your personal effort matters.
So after years of this intense, all-consuming national effort, America was fundamentally transformed. The country that came out of the war was simply not the same one that had gone into it.
And maybe the most significant social legacy of the home front was how it challenged conventional ideas about the role of women in American society. Millions of women entered the workforce, many for the first time, taking on tough, demanding jobs in factories and shipyards. It was a seismic shift that started to permanently change the fabric of the nation.
And that was just one piece of the transformation. The home front experience redefined women's roles, for sure, but it also massively expanded the government's role in the economy and daily life. It proved the awesome power of American industry. And through all that shared sacrifice, it forged a powerful sense of national identity that would shape the country for decades.
All those ration books, volunteer forms, and official orders from the 1940s, they tell a powerful story of a nation that came together for a common cause. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our age of emails, social media, and digital everything, what will our footprint tell future historians about the challenges and the shared purposes of our time?